Chapter 43 to 48. Outside the cave. Scorch release, extremely steaming murder. Accompanied by the hissing sound of steam, the surface of countless terracotta puppets gradually dried up, with numerous cracks appearing that became larger and larger as the moisture turned into a vapor mist, and eventually all the puppets shattered into a pile of gravel. However, Pakura didn't pay much attention to them. At this time, she was a little pale and stressed. On the other side, after continuously using earth-release ninjutsu to temporarily imprison many puppets, the captain of the rock unit turned his head and looked at the entrance of the cave with a solemn expression. He could only imagine what kind of fierce battle would be taking place inside the cave based on the loud rumbling noises and the continuous shaking of the mountain since the demon went inside. At the cave entrance. After temporarily repelling the ghost army with detonation charm, Kakashi retreated to Guy's side and asked anxiously, "Guy, are they really okay?" Guy nodded without any hesitation, "I believe in Kuroto." Rumbling noises. As soon as Guy spoke, another loud noise came from inside the cave. Accompanied by the loud noise, a breath of evil chakra could also be felt from the outside. Kakashi quickly looked at the cave with the Sharingan passed onto him by his teammate Uchiha Obito. In the vision of the Sharingan, Kakashi could see that the evil chakra belonging to Morio was so substantial that it was getting difficult to be contained within the cave, as it spread in the surroundings, making the area all around gloomy and chilling. Wiping the trace of sweat from his temple, Kakashi couldn't help but sigh helplessly. Facing such a demon means looking for death. Inside the cave. Kuroto, who was hovering in midair, shouted to Shisui, "Leave the rest to me." Shisui nodded without any argument and dispersed the Susanoo. It has only been a few minutes from the beginning to now, but he was already out of breath. From Shisui's condition, it can be judged that awakening Mangekyo at a very young age is not a good thing. Without Susanoo's suppression, Morio's struggle to free itself became more intense. The previous failure of ineffectively casting his secret technique not only slapped away his arrogance but also dropped his confidence in himself. At this moment, Morio has understood that both Kuroto and Shisui are strong ninjas with weird dojutsu powers that make him feel uneasy instinctively. Such a thing was unimaginable before. In fact, Morio has been unable to catch up with the series of changes since the appearance of Susanoo. He is unaware of the top powerhouses of the shinobi world. Never did he imagine falling into such a dangerous trap, making him a little panicked at the situation. It wasn't until now he realized that the cultists that were following his orders didn't have any power to stand up to the top powerhouses of the shinobi world. It was simply a mistake to use those weaklings as a basis to judge the strength of the entire shinobi world. Morio has also been aware that the strange ninja hovering beside Kuroto is a soulless puppet, but unfortunately, he hasn't been able to manipulate it because of the interference of Tenseigan Chakra. Two powerful shinobi about whom he knows close to nothing, plus the Miko of the lands of demons who can naturally restrain him, no matter how arrogant he may be. Morio realizes that the current situation is unfavorable for him, making him feel that if he doesn't escape from here then he can't avoid the fate of being sealed here. Therefore, he was putting all his effort in getting out of restraints. Facing the crazy struggle put up Morio, Kuroto looked grim. Since Kuroto has already revealed the Kazekage puppet and openly used magnet release so naturally, he won't hesitate in transferring all his chakra, so no matter how many iron spears Morio get rid of, they will keep on coming to firmly nail him in one place. Damn human. The continuous barrage of iron spears piercing his body made the demon roar in anger. The current combat effectiveness of the Kazekage puppet with all the chakra that Kuroto transferred, is close to the Kazekage himself while he was still alive, and the Sandame Kazekage was known as the strongest Kazekage with Kage level strength. If such a powerhouse is restraining the demon, then short-term suppression isn't very difficult. Time passed second by second. And finally, the ceiling formation was activated. In just a few moments, all the Fuin symbols arranged all around the cave emitted a faint glow. This glow became brighter and brighter like a dazzling sun. Morio was feeling more and more threatened as this was all happening. His struggle to escape was near suicidal. Even if he injured himself in the process, all he wanted was to escape from this damn cave. Rumbling noises. Due to the shaking of the mountain, a part of the ground on which Morio was impaled broke apart, resulting in iron sand scattering all around. Seeing this, Kuroto made up his mind. It's already reached this point, how can he give Morio any chance to make a comeback? So without any restraint, Kuroto transferred his leftover chakra to the Kazekage puppet. The crushed and shattered iron sand once again reformed into spears, piercing the demon's body. Although, Shisui still wanted to help, however, as soon as he took a step forward, his feet softened, and fell to the ground. Using Susanoo consumed most of his chakra, although he didn't feel the immediate effect, but when he thought of using it once again, Shisui realized that with his current immature physique he can't bear it. At this moment Miko-sama also finished chanting, following which she slowly got up from her position, pointed at Morio, and spoke in a sublime voice. Fuin technique, the demon's sealing, start. The dazzling glow around the cave brightened at Miko-sama's command and all the light spots flew towards Morio. No! Morio struggled in horror and wailed. Morio's final struggle was violent that it was getting increasingly difficult to breathe because of the evil chakra escaping in the surrounding, and even then, he was still able to resist the sealing. Seeing no option left, Kuroto sighed and used the secret technique of physical regeneration, forcibly squeezing out the chakra from the new cells. Cough cough. Cough. He coughed out blood because of the overconsumption and burden he was feeling, but this technique did help fight the demon to the end. With the last wave of attacks, the demon could no longer resist the sealing technique, and accompanied by a wailing sound, his huge body deflated like a popped-up balloon. As soon as Morio wilted, Miko-sama made several hand seals, following which the light balls all around merged into a curtain of light engraved with the same sealing technique. This light curtain wrapped around the demon layer by layer, firmly restricting his movements. By the time all the light dissipated, only a giant cocoon wrapped up in white cloth with the sealing formation printed on it fell in front of Kuroto and Shisui. Shisui, who somehow managed to get sit, exclaimed in joy, "Is that a success?" As if to answer Shisui's question, suddenly, a thick and dark purple chakra bursts out of the cracks suddenly, but strangely it didn't try to attack anyone, only fled in a panic towards the entrance of the cave. Undoubtedly when Morio's body was sealed by Miko-sama, his soul hid in the crevices, thereby avoiding the fate of being sealed, and now he is trying to escape because nobody is in any condition to stop him. Seeing Morio trying to escape in the soul form, Miko-sama was suddenly panicked. Hurry up and stop it. If Morio's soul manages to escape, then the purpose of sealing would be useless, and there would be endless trouble in the follow-up. Whoosh! Even before Miko-sama spoke, a sharp sound of cutting through the wind was heard. The sound was the result of Shisui throwing several shuriken towards escaping Morio. Although they were accurately targeted, nonetheless all of them passed through him and didn't cause any substantial damage to Morio's soul, which wasn't anything strange either. After all, how can something like shuriken with a physical state affect Morio's soul that is a pure amalgamation of evil chakra? Seeing the attack being ineffective, Shisui's expression sank. Although he wanted to use another attack, it was already too late as the soul of the demon was far out of his range, not mention his attacks seemed to be ineffective on Morio. Within just a few moments, Morio's soul was already near the entrance of the cave. Seeing the situation turning for worse, Kuroto gritted his teeth and decisively used Rain Will Pull. Suddenly the madly laughing Morio in the soul state, who was almost close to escaping the fate of being sealed, stagnated, as if being firmly grasped by an invisible pair of hands. He couldn't move anymore, even if he is a combination of evil chakra in the soul form. Being under the effect of Rain Will interaction, he wasn't able to break free. If I really... let you escape, then wow, cough cough, wouldn't I have put this much effort in? Cough cough cough. In vain. With much difficulty, Kuroto muttered and restarted using the secret technique of physical regeneration to obtain chakra, as a result of which he was able to increase the chakra input in Rain Will Pull to drag Morio's soul towards him. With the improvement in strength that Kuroto has experienced in the past few months, the effective range of his Rain Will interaction from 15 meters to 20 meters, and this improvement isn't just quantitative but also qualitative, that is to say within a range of 20 meters with him as the center he can have complete control over interaction force. So, being able to escape from this attack was no longer an option for Morio. As Morio's soul slowly got pulled towards Kuroto, Miko-sama took out a wooden box from the storage scroll and used printed several Fuinjutsu techniques on it to make it suitable for containing Morio's soul. No. Please no. No. In the soul state without the protection of his physical body, he couldn't resist Miko-sama's sealing, and with the last unwilling roar, he was completely sealed in the wooden box. Seeing that it was finally over, the three slumped on the ground and sighed with relief. At this time all three of them are extremely exhausted both physically and mentally. Miko-sama performed several Fuinjutsu technique one after another that took a lot out of her, especially the final Fuin techniques that sealed away Morio's body exhausted most of her chakra, and put a lot of burden on her both physically and spiritually, so even if she didn't personally intervene in the battle, her consumption is no less than others. Shisui's situation is not any better. Having awakened the Manjikyu at such a young age already puts a lot of burden on him before he grows up and his Manjikyu evolves into eternal Manjikyu. Additionally, he used Susanoo to suppress Morio, so his consumption was far greater than he could have imagined. As for Kuroto, his condition is the worst of all. He even had to rely on the secret technique of physical regeneration to overcome his lack of chakra in the battle, so his lifespan was also shortened by at least 2 to 3 months. Nevertheless, this is still the best situation considering just how strong Morio's actual strength is. If not for the trap and ambush method, their win would have been difficult to imagine. After a short rest, Miko-sama sincerely thanked Kuroto and Shursui. I am really grateful to both of you. I cannot imagine the consequences that might have happened if Morio somehow managed to escape. Miroku was grateful to both Kuroto and Shursui from the bottom of her heart. Originally, she thought that only by using her death as a catalyst would she be able to successfully seal the demon, but because of Kuroto and Shursui's help, things turned down quite smoothly. After putting away the Kazekage puppet, Kuroto nodded to Miko-sama. I have done what I promised. Miko-sama also nodded. Don't worry, I will also honor my promise. At this time Shursui also stood up and asked Kuroto curiously, Kuroto-san, did you use puppet technique in the battle? And was the puppet using magnet release? Listening to Shursui's question, Kuroto decided to not hide it, and directly told the truth. Well, it's a puppet obtained by pure coincidence, and yes, the puppet was using magnet release. As for why it can use magnet release, that's easy to answer. It's because it's a human puppet created from the body of Sandaime Kazekage's corpse. What? Not only Shursui, but even Miko-sama was also taken aback as soon as they heard this piece of information. They couldn't help it either. Sandaime Kazekage, known as the strongest Kazekage, became a puppet. If this is not shocking, then translator Kun doesn't know what is. Sandaime Kazekage was killed and turned into a human puppet through forbidden techniques by a puppet master of the Sand Shinobi village that became a missing meme. Not too long ago, I accidentally encountered him in a battle and was lucky enough to have obtained the puppet by a chance of pure coincidence. Kuroto briefly explained about his encounter with Sasori. However, this information again surprised Shursui. Kazekage-sama were assassinated by a ninja of his own village? Kuroto nodded. Precisely because this information is highly confidential that I don't use this puppet often. Moreover, this matter also involves Sand Village's reputation. If revealed in public, it would cause serious diplomatic issues. Make sure to not reveal the puppet's existence, else it would definitely lead to a conflict between Konoha and Sand. Hearing Kuroto mention the seriousness of the information and it could elevate to a possible war between two of the 5 great shinobi villages, Miko-sama and Shursui both solemnly promised, we will never leak it out. Obviously, the reason why Kuroto dared to use Kazekage's puppet here because he is sure that neither Shursui nor Miko-sama would reveal this information to anyone else. Miko-sama is the kind of good-natured person who would rather sacrifice herself than let the demon run havoc on the world. Additionally, she is also indebted to him, so she wouldn't reveal it. As for Shursui, is there even a need to consider this? Uchiha Shursui committed suicide to avoid becoming the fuse of war between the Uchiha and Konoha. Even after being betrayed by Shimura Danzo, he is someone who would definitely avoid doing something that would threaten Konoha's peace. And for the second reason, Kuroto also knows about Shursui's Manjikyu, so in a way, they are both keeping a secret for each other. And even in the worst-case scenario, puppet's existence is leaked somehow, it wouldn't be such a big deal to hand it over to the village as a spoil of war. After all, it was just pure luck for him to have obtained it. It's not like he is the who killed the Kazekage. His only worry would be to effectively hide Tenseigan's existence. Anyway, Kuroto decided to change the subject and asked Shursui, so the rumors about there being an advanced form of the Sharingan called the Manjikyu Sharingan above 3 Tomo state is true? If I am not wrong, you have awakened the Manjikyu, haven't you, Shursui? Shursui also didn't try to hide or evade the question and honestly answered with a smile, well, it is true, the technique I used to fight against Morio is called Susanoo, which the Uchihas can use once their Sharingan evolves into Manjikyu Sharingan. As said before, sharing one's secrets is undoubtedly one of the best ways to get closer to each other. After Miko-sama, Kuroto, and Shursui shared their individual secrets, the friendship between them deepened a lot. With all said and done, Kuroto decided to ask something from Miko-sama. Miko-sama, so what are you going to do with Morio's soul? Miko-sama, who was repeatedly checking the seal on the cubical wooden box that sealed Morio's soul, answered Kuroto's question absent-minded. After repeatedly strengthening the seal, I am going to choose a suitable location in the lands of Demon to place to hide this box. That way Morio's body and soul will be hundreds of miles apart, so his chances of resurrecting again will be minimal. Compared to the seal on Morio's body, the wooden box sealing his soul isn't safe enough. According to Kuroto's guess, that might have been one of the reasons he managed to get free in the original series, but since Miko-sama has stated that she would rearrange the seals on it and place it in a secure location, therefore, Kuroto decided not to worry much about it. In fact, Kuroto's mind has long been past the demon Morio, and he has already begun to wonder how to ask Miko-sama to teach him Miko's Fuinjutsu techniques. After witnessing her seal Morio, Kuroto has reached the conclusion that her Fuinjutsu mastery is undoubtedly among the best in the current shinobi world. If he missed this opportunity, then his artificial-tailed beast plan may only remain a dream forever, and Kuroto isn't willing to let that happen. While supporting each other out of the cave, Guy's figure was the first one that came into Kuroto's sight. Obviously, Guy faithfully followed Kuroto's instructions and didn't let either of the sand or rock shinobi enter inside the cave. Finally noticing that the three people, although in a battered state but safely came out of the cave, Guy showed his signature smile and spoke with a thumb up. "Kuroto, I knew you will succeed." Not far away, Kakashi didn't say anything but took a breath of relief. No matter how cold and indifferent he may look, his subconscious actions speak otherwise. Pakura, along with the other shinobi of the Sand Village, also carefully observed Miko-sama, Kuroto, and Shursui. The previous movements and shaking of the cave was felt by everyone outside, so they can more or less guess. At least Pakura, being a near Kage class kunoichi, can make some conclusions just how fierce the battle inside might have been, and the fact that both the Konoha shinobi not only managed to come out alive but also successfully sealed the demon, earned both of them her respect. On the other hand, the look in the eyes of the rock beheading unit was not so good, although their captain didn't let it show on his face, by masking himself with a thoughtful look that seemed to say that he was considering some things. By being a little absent-minded, it wasn't that difficult for Kuroto to judge some of his intentions. Since the demon Morio, which was a threat to the shinobi world, is successfully sealed, the cooperative relationship between the several shinobi villages has also come to an end, and is replaced by previous hostility just like all times. At this time, Miko-sama, who was holding the cubical wooden box, gratefully bowed to all the ninjas present and thanked them earnestly for helping her seal Morio. Although the others that were outside didn't play any significant role, like Kuroto and Shursui, just from the broken stone puppets of the ghost army lying all around and the traces of battle left, it's not hard for her to see that the battle that took place outside to stop the interference of the ghost army was just as fierce, if not fiercer, than the one that took place inside. After all, until Morio is completely sealed, the ghost army had a continuous supply of chakra, because of which they were almost undefeatable due to their toughness and regeneration, giving them an immortal trait. And even then, the shinobi guarding the cave didn't let even a single puppet pass through, which made it possible for Kuroto and Shursui to suppress the demon. Therefore, Miko-sama was earnestly grateful to all those present here. After everyone accepted Miko-sama's gratitude, the shinobi of Sand and Rock villages left one after another, while the Konoha class, 11, was responsible for safely escorting Miko-sama back to her temple in the lands of Demon. Because of the deal between Kuroto and Miko-sama, Konoha shinobi were also given another mission of eradicating the remnants of cultists as an excuse of their temporary stay in the lands of demons. Of course, the work of eradicating the remnants of the cultists was handed over to Kakashi, Guy, and Shursui by Kuroto, while he recovered from his injuries at Miko's temple, patiently waiting for the delivery of purple clay. While he didn't have nothing much to do, Kuroto recollected and summed up his battle with Morio. This battle was the first time that he had used up all his chakra since awakening the Tenseigan. Therefore, even though he had to rely on the secret technique that cost him approximately 2 to 3 months of lifespan, it still exposed and gave him an understanding of many of his problems and flaws, which was an unexpected gain. But the adverse effects of exhausting all his chakra volume were more serious than he expected them to be, making him unable to exert any energy and an extremely worn-out spirit in the following days to come. Undoubtedly, Kuroto is glad that the Tenseigan pair within his eye sockets is his own, making it perfect sync with his soul and body, so the burden is easy to bear. If his Tenseigan would have been transplanted from others, then by now he would have suffered an irrecoverable backlash, and even if he somehow managed to survive, he would have lost much of his vitality. And this was the case with Otsutsuki Tonari. After being defeated by Naruto the Tenseigan, he awakened by transplantation of Hanabi's Byakugan, faded away since his chakra and spirit were exhausted. When someone like Tonari, capable of cutting the moon in half, wasn't able to keep the Tenseigan awakened, goes to show just how difficult it is to maintain the Tenseigan. Similar is the case with the Rinnegan. The power displayed by Madara with it is obviously of another scale compared to Nagato or Obito. They never use techniques like Tengai Shinsei, or Rinbo, Hengoku and other superior techniques of the Rinnegan like Madara did. This clarifies just how different it is when the real Awakener uses the Dojutsu compared to non-Awakener. The weaklings don't even have the qualification to possess the eyes of gods. This again confirmed Kuroto's guess that his Tenseigan is in sync with him spiritually and has been suppressing its abilities instinctively to avoid causing any irreversible damage to Kuroto, who isn't yet worthy of possessing them. After understanding this, Kuroto couldn't help but sigh emotionally. Now Kuroto has also understood not use all his chakra rashly in the future. At the same time, he is more obsessed with the artificial tailed beast, the same kind of obsession that Orochimaru had with the Sharingan. As a result of which Kuroto couldn't help it anymore and asked Miko-sama to teach him Fuinjutsu. However, her reply was a disappointment for him. According to Miko-sama, Miko's Fuinjutsu techniques can't be used by those not carrying their blood, and this point has been verified by several generations of Mikos. Simply put, it's a Kekai Genkai. This is also the reason why the position of Mikos of the Land of Demons is inherited only by their descendants. So, Kuroto had no choice but to sigh in disappointment, but Miko-sama still promised to help him learn the other Fuinjutsu techniques he wants. As a Fuinjutsu master, it is not very difficult for her to understand other techniques. Therefore, Kuroto immediately entrusted all the 700-plus Fuinjutsu techniques involved in the artificial tailed beast plan to Miko-sama and asked for her guidance. Miko-sama was also not reserved but in fact, showed great interest. All the sealing techniques involved in the artificial tailed beast plan are of the Uzumaki clan. Being the most proficient clan to have even developed techniques like the dead demon consuming seal, the adamantine sealing chains, the four-symbol seal, etc. Even Miko-sama with extreme mastery over Fuinjutsu was amazed by their skills. After several days of research and learning, combined with her own knowledge, she soon became familiar with the Uzumaki seals and mastered all the Fuinjutsu techniques involved in the artificial tailed beast plan. These techniques are simply too deft. Uzumakis were really admirable to have developed such amazing knowledge. These words came from her heart. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu's style focuses on controlling the strong by the weak. With the weak body of a human, monsters like tailed beasts can be easily suppressed. This is the reason why since the establishment of Konoha, Kyuubi's Jinchuriki has always been the Uzumaki clansman. So, after learning all these sealing techniques, Miroku felt that she had actually taken a big advantage off of Kuroto, which is why she wholeheartedly guided him in learning Fuinjutsu without any reservation. Since awakening the Tenseigan, Kuroto's comprehensive power has increased a lot. Therefore, under Miko-sama's careful guidance, he mastered all the 700-plus techniques involved in the artificial tailed beast plan within 10 days. These Fuinjutsu techniques are aimed for sealing the tailed beasts, aren't they? This was her conclusion. Kuroto didn't try to hide from her since it was pretty much useless to do so in the first place and nodded while he also asked a question. Miko-sama, do you think it would be possible to suppress the tailed beasts with mastery over this much knowledge? She thought for a while, then shook her head. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu knowledge is too deft. Although I have understood most of what you have provided me with, it's still not enough for me to draw out a conclusion. Besides, there are many parts even I am not confident about, so I can't say for sure. Kuroto frowned from her response. You were able to seal Morio, who has a similar level of strength as a tailed beast. Shouldn't you be able to judge using this fact alone? However, Kuroto had to be disappointed as Miko-sama denied with an apologetic smile. You're misunderstanding as well as overestimating my strength, Kuroto-san. The only reason I can seal Morio is because of the natural restraint Miko's Fuinjutsu has on him. If it was a tailed beast in his stead, the result would have definitely been unpredictable. As the two sides of one coin, Mikos and Morio have a mutual restraint on each other, so our fight cannot be used as a basis to make an effective judgment. Listening to her words, Kuroto's frown deepened. For the past 2 weeks he has been using Miko-sama's battle with Morio as a basis to judge the strength of tailed beasts. But now that she has said otherwise, Kuroto finally understands that the reason why Konoha dropped the tailed beast project is that the lack of Fuinjutsu knowledge to safely create a Jinchuriki. The tailed beasts must be secured with enough restraints, else it isn't a weapon against the enemies but a ticking time bomb for their own village, and with the demise of the Uzumaki clan, Konoha's source of obtaining such information disappeared. Since he thought about it, Kuroto decided to have an in-depth discussion with Miko-sama. So, after pondering for a while, he asked her, Miko-sama, have you ever seen a tailed beast? Miko-sama shook her head. I personally estimate that the strength of Morio is in the same class as a chibi or maybe nibi. Taking a short pause, he continued, if you don't count the natural restraint you have on Morio, do you think it would have been possible to seal Morio with these techniques? Miko-sama took a moment to think and then replied, if Morio is in a weakened state, it may be possible. Regardless of that, if Konoha village needs help in sealing the tailed beast, I might be able to help. How? Miko-sama explained, Uzumaki Fuinjutsu technique is different Mikos as their primary focus is internal sealing, while I have mastery over external sealing. Since Kuroto has already mastered the basics of Fuinjutsu, he immediately understood what she was trying to imply. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu pays more attention to practicality. Their sealing technique is often focused from the inside to the outside, as such it is possible to obtain the power of the sealed subject. The best example of this power is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. On the other hand, Miko's Fuinjutsu is more traditional, as they focus on isolation and suppression. In terms of subtlety, it is far inferior to Uzumaki's, while in terms of stability they are far superior to Uzumaki's. Now that he knows this, Kuroto immediately cooked up a new idea, that is, a double seal. In the first step, as per the thesis according to the scroll given to him by Orochimaru, use the core shell made of purple clay, and use Uzumaki Fuinjutsu techniques to make an unstable-tailed beast. In the second step, use Miko's Fuinjutsu to seal the unstable-tailed beast in an object that can be carried. In this way, the risk of artificial tailed beast running away will be greatly reduced, and Kuroto wouldn't have to be worried about being influenced by it either. There would be no need to worry about it on regular days, and it can be immediately suppressed by external seals if something is found wrong while in battle. With this objective in his mind, Kuroto decided his further course of action. A few days later, Kakashi and the others responsible for destroying the cultists returned to the Temple of Miko. From the looks of it, the mission wasn't a success. After Morio was sealed, these cultists vanished into thin air. No matter how much effort they put, all they could find were some of the low-level members, but their leader Yomi was missing. However, contrary to what Kuroto expected, Miko-sama didn't care too much about this. According to her, without Morio's support, Yomi is no different from just some Chunin-class wandering nin. If he leaves any trace, then she can just hire shinobi from the 5 great nations to eliminate him. Since Miko-sama didn't care, Kuroto also put past the thought, since Miroku-sama is alive, which is different from the case according to the original series, therefore Morio's resurrection shouldn't happen. Moreover, he will be in contact with her for his artificial tailed beast plan, so there would be more opportunities to come to eliminate Yomi. Kakashi and others were a little depressed about it, but they also knew that the 11th class can no longer stay in the land of demons, as it has already been close to a month since they left for the mission, and since the Konoha is under great pressure, so they have to leave. So with an apology they bid goodbye to Miko-sama and left. Before they left, Miko-sama also completed her part of the deal, so Kuroto received purple clay as promised. In fact, she went a little bored and collected nearly a ton of purple clay by mobilizing the power of Land of Demons, although it must have cost a lot, but nobody complained. After all, some monetary value is nothing compared to the countless lives that were saved, including her own. Additionally, Kuroto and Shursui repeatedly reassured her that they would never reveal her secret, so Miko-sama went full throttle, and the authorities of Land of Demons naturally complied with her demand. So after finally bidding farewell to Miko-sama and Cheyenne, the 4 shinobi of the class 11 embarked on their returning journey. On the way back, the 4 shinobi who went through many life and death battles together in the past few days were more friendly with each other and chatted without any reservation. This mission not only increased their knowledge, strength, and experience, but also their trust in each other. Even the silent and indifferent Kakashi would occasionally add sentences in the conversation. The group mostly traveled with occasional stops. Soon they were past the territory of the Land of Demons and entered the country of bears. There is a small shinobi village in the country of bears, but their military strength isn't very strong, so there are many wandering ninjas here that are supported by Rock Village. Their purpose is to quietly infiltrate this country and continuously plunder the resources of the country of bears. While traveling through a dense forest, Kuroto at the front suddenly stopped. Guy asked quickly, "What's wrong?" Kuroto's replied with a gloomy face, "Ambush." Kuroto's reply immediately alerted the other 3. Kakashi sniffed his surroundings. He actually has very good smelling senses like that of an Inuzuka, making him able to even notice what others can't. Even in the 3rd Shinobi War, he used this point to take advantage of his enemies. Boom. Boom, boom. Suddenly, a series of violent explosions broke out all around, and the flames of the explosions engulfed the 4 shinobi of Class 11. Title: Ambush. As soon as the 4 were about to be engulfed in the flames, Kakashi used a water release ninjutsu. Water release, water formation wall. Crash, Waisish. The agitated water released by Kakashi collided with the surging flames of the explosion, resulting in boundless steam rising up that covered the surroundings in a thick mist. Feeling the vibrations from his feet, and Kuroto immediately warned, "Everyone, disperse." As soon as his words fell, countless sharp soil thorns burst out of the ground, shooting at the 4 people. With Kuroto's warning, the 4 of them jumped to the trunks of the surrounding trees, avoiding another silent attack under the cover of explosions. Guy looked around. Where is the enemy? Boom, boom. Boom. As if to answer Guy's question, there was another series of deadly explosions. Under the effect of explosions, the 4 shinobi of Class 11 were forced to disperse again. Now the distance between them was again increased. Although the surrounding mist was not very disturbing for Kuroto because of the Tenseigan, the continuous explosions forced him to retreat opposite to the direction where his teammates were. Seeing that he was continuously being separated from the others, Kuroto more or less guessed who the attacker might be. And sure enough, it didn't take long for a figure to step in front of Kuroto. So, should I say that I am extremely grateful for you to show yourself here on your own accord? Because you know, I was really worried about how I was going to find you. Kuroto spoke with his bloodlust leaking. He wasn't even trying to control his bloodlust, which is completely opposite to how shinobi work, but against this bastard, he won't. While Kuroto said this, a figure wearing the official shinobi uniform of the Rock Village came out of the burning flames. That's correct, Reader Kun, it is the captain of the Rock Beheading Unit who was also part of the assault team while sealing the demon Morio that came through the burning flames. Initially, Kuroto thought about killing the captain along with eradicating the entire beheading unit, but then he let that thought pass away because he has more important things to do, so to avoid pointless trouble, he suppressed his urge for revenge. He didn't consider that even if he didn't bother to go after the bastard, the other party would come to him on his own initiative. The captain said with a smile, "Well, look at you. Was it so expected?" Kuroto didn't answer but just grinned, "Although I am a little curious, how did you discover the route we would be taking? I can be quite sure no one was following us." Based on the continuous attacks since the ambush, the Rock unit had clearly discovered the route they were going to follow in advance, otherwise, it is simply impossible to have arranged ambush attacks so perfectly. But he is also confident that Class 11 wasn't any careless in choosing their route, he himself was continuously exploring the surroundings, not to mention Shursui was there to make sure they weren't being followed. Squeak. At this time, a small head sprang out from the neckline of the captain. Kuroto frowned seeing it, because it was just an ordinary-looking squirrel. A squirrel? Kuroto muttered absent-mindedly, then shook his head denying, "No, this isn't just some ordinary squirrel, it's a summon beast. There are many types of summoning beasts. It's not wrong to say that as long as an animal is capable of using chakra it can be regarded as a summon beast, and this seemingly ordinary squirrel is no exception to that. Isn't this guy cute? He may be little but is perfectly capable of tracking any familiar smell from miles away." After a smile, he continued, "I know you belong to the Hyuga clan, so of course, I won't follow you personally." Kuroto wasn't any surprised when he heard that, but he still asked, "So you do remember me, huh?" From the other party's manner of speaking, it wasn't hard to figure out that he also remembers him. After the battle in which Kuroto almost died, not only did he remember the other party, but the enemy also remembered that he survived. Now the captain put away his smile, and said with a cold face, "Last time you were just a low-class chunin, I didn't expect you to grow up to this point in such a short time. The saying, Konoha being a cradle of geniuses, isn't wrong." Kuroto also said coldly, "It looks you regret it, huh?" Captain gritted his teeth and said bitterly, "Yes, I really not being able to kill you that time. So here I am, correcting the mistake of the past. This time he won't be here to save you, and I'll never let a second yellow flash appear in Konoha. If I allow you to grow anymore, you'll become a threat for the Rock Village, and it is my responsibility, as you being alive is my mistake." Hyuga Kuroto, who is only about 15 years old, is already able to interfere in the battle involving tailed beast-class monsters. It is hard to imagine what will his strength be in a decade. If allowed to live, he will inevitably grow up to be another yellow flash, which is absolutely intolerable for the Rock Village. Rock Village has never forgotten the humiliation at the hands of Yellow Flash. Boom. A faint explosion sounded in the distance. There is no doubt that the other members of Class 11 have also encountered enemies, and currently battling them. Kuroto thought with some absent-mindedness. Seeing Kuroto a little distracted, the Rock Captain said, "Don't worry about them. Those brats will be joining you in the Pure Land very soon. Remember, the name of the person to kill you is Iwamado. Doton, Mogirigakur no Jutsu. Earth Release, Hiding like a Mole Technique." Seeing Iwamado dive into the ground, Kuroto jumped on a big tree to avoid being attacked from the ground and observed carefully. However, suddenly there was a sound of water bursting off the ground not far away. Kuroto turned his sight and muttered, "This is the technique of waterfall." Although this jutsu isn't a threat for Kuroto while he is on the tree, he didn't dare take any chances. The opponent is not only an elite jonin but also the captain of the fearsome beheading unit, someone who is more than experienced to not waste any chakra on the battlefield unnecessarily. Because of the water release jutsu, the ground was wet and muddy. Kuroto felt that the muddy ground was somehow not good, but it was difficult for him to tell why exactly. After all, he didn't know much about earth release. Wish. 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 Suddenly, many pellets fired out of the muddy ground, and like sharp kunai, they all blasted towards Kuroto on the tree. In the face of dense shots of rock pellets, Kuroto didn't hesitate to use defensive techniques. 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. Revolving heaven can protect him but not the tree under his feet. In the blink of an eye, the tree was ridden with holes all over and fell to the ground in the flying sawdust. As Kuroto landed on the other tree not far away, few whips made of wet mud entangled his legs and yanked him towards the ground. Bang! With a muffled noise, Kuroto fell on the ground. Cough cough. Kuroto curled up and coughed out blood. The sudden fall made him feel dizzy, and even his breathing was getting rigorous. Looks like a few ribs are broken. Seeing Kuroto down, Iwamoto rose from the ground, revealing half of his body, and said with a condescending smile, "It seems that I overestimated you, and your Byakugan is also not strong as I imagined." Suddenly, Kuroto, who was curled up, suddenly raised the corners of his lips, revealing a mocking smile. Seeing that smile, Iwamoto didn't have any good feeling, but when he was about to sink into the ground, a sudden force caught him and plucked him out of the ground. WH = what the hell? In a panicked state, Iwamoto was dragged towards Kuroto. Kuroto, who fell on the ground, suddenly propped his body and with all his effort used 8 trigrams 64 palms. Tuck. 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 Accompanied by the rapid sounds of palm strikes, Iwamoto flew out and fell on the mud not far away. Cough cough, shit. After delivering a series of gentle fist strikes to Iwamoto, Kuroto again coughed out blood. Although he deliberately pretended to let Iwamoto drop his guard, but the injuries he suffered were not fake. To be honest, he didn't expect the mud whip to be powerful enough to injure him. Having fallen from such height injured his lungs, and due to internal bleeding, he was feeling a little dizzy. Guess that's what you get for underestimating the enemy. Taking a deep breath to stabilize his ragged breath, Kuroto said lightly, "It's useless, Iwamoto, I know you are well awake." When Iwamoto heard Kuroto say this, he opened his eyes suddenly and jumped out of the mud while speaking in surprise, "Boy, what jutsu was that just now?" Kuroto snorted, "Idiot. You think I'll tell you?" However, Iwamoto wasn't angry at Kuroto's denial as he said lightly, "It's alright, I'll make sure to extract everything out of you after I rip your arms and legs apart." As he said, Iwamoto pulled out a short knife from his waist. Kuroto had to accept that Iwamoto is an elite jonin of Rock Village. Previously, when he was pulled by Kuroto under Rain Will's effect, the bastard immediately used an earth release ninjutsu, hardening several parts of his body, so even though Kuroto's palm strikes sealed his tenketsu, it still didn't cause any significant harm to his body. Although Iwamoto's tenketsu are blocked, making him unable to use chakra from them, but as an elite jonin, even without complete access to his chakra pathway, he is definitely a dangerous enemy. And since Kuroto was injured, therefore Iwamoto felt he still had an advantage over the kid. Seeing that his situation was not very optimistic, Kuroto said no nonsense and directly took out a scroll with "San" written on it, to summon Kazekage puppet in front of Iwamoto. This is... Iwamoto was stunned when he looked at the puppet floating in the mid-air with iron sand all around him. As a ninja to have experienced 3 shinobi world wars, his knowledge is more than enough for him to recognize the unique Kekai Genkai of the Kazekage clan. Exposing the Kazekage puppet here is a very risky move, so without speaking any nonsense, Kuroto transferred his chakra to the puppet to launch attacks. Magnet release, iron sand weaponry. Instantly, the iron sand floating in the sky turned into hundreds of sharp spikes, shuriken, kunai, spears, and swords, which rushed towards Iwamoto like raindrops. Chink, clang, clink, shing shang. Iwamoto had a cold sweat on his forehead seeing this series of attacks. As soon as the spikes, spears, and swords rushed towards him, he took a defending stance, and the short knife in his hands was like a gorgeous dancing bella, accompanied by the sound of the harsh metal collision. He continuously diverted, deflected, blocked, dodged, and reflected back the iron sand objects. Seeing this, Kuroto frowned. He thought since Iwamoto's chakra is sealed, the battle should be concluded quickly with Kazekage's attacks, but he didn't expect the bastard Iwamoto is such proficient in kenjutsu. However, Kuroto was still not very worried, because Iwamoto obviously can't stop an endless rain of attacks, and not long after Iwamoto's waist, abdomen, chest, right eye, and several other parts of his body were ridden with sharp objects. Now Iwamoto also knew, he can't make a turnaround in this battle, so he gritted his teeth and shouted, "Secret technique, blood burst technique." The blood burst technique is Iwamoto's unique secret technique. As soon as it is used, the amount of chakra in the body of the user will sharply increase, making it possible to break through genjutsu, chakra restraints, and even some seals. As Iwamoto used the secret technique, his face and body turned blood red as if all the blood in his body was burning, and steam started coming off of him. For some reason, even Kuroto felt danger and immediately retreated backward to increase the distance between the two. In the vision of the Tenseigan, he could see that the chakra within Iwamoto was like a raging flame. It was so violent, unrestrained, and uncontrolled. Kuroto remembers this kind of chakra turbulence. This is similar to Gai's Hashiman Tanku. However, Iwamoto's state is much worse than Gai's, as his chakra could completely engulf him at any moment, which is definitely a negative effect of the secret technique, and very often such techniques have extraordinary power that can even turn the tide of a battle. In just a few breaths, the tenketsu sealed by Kuroto's palm strikes were overflowed with chakra, following which Iwamoto started printing hand seals with a flashing speed. Earth release, Earth Dragon Bullet. Earth release, Earth and Stone Bamboo Shoot. Earth release, Mud Whip Bind. In an instant, with a low voice filled with murderous intent, he fired 3 Class A ninjutsu simultaneously. All of a sudden, the howling dragon rushed towards Kuroto, then 4 spears sprout out of the ground in an attempt to skewer him, not to mention the violent mud whip that was coming to entangle him to prevent him from dodging. Faced with this series of attacks, even with the insight of Tenseigan, Kuroto wasn't sure how to dodge. Since he can't dodge, then the defense is the best option. Magnet release, Iron Sand Armor. The iron sand flying all around suddenly condensed into a huge iron sand ball, wrapping him and the Kazekage puppet inside in protection. Boom boom. Smash, and crack. The deafening sound of the continuous impact was hurtful to the eardrums, but the iron sand armor didn't budge. Inside the iron sand ball, Kuroto was squatting on the ground, trying to think of a way to make an effective countermeasure. The sequela of the secret technique is bound to be unsustainable for Iwamoto, so according to common sense, as long as Kuroto drags out the battle, the balance of victory will continue to tilt on his side, but considering how meticulously Iwamoto arranged this ambush, the enemy may not be just their 4-man team, as reinforcements could arrive at any time. So, it isn't possible to be sure whether dragging out the battle would be advantageous or not. After a little brainstorming, Kuroto decided to go for a quick decision, even if that would involve some risks. After all, the identity of the Kazekage puppet is too sensitive. If any other rock shinobi discovers it and passes on this information to their higher-ups, it would be very big trouble for him. After making up his mind, Kuroto instructed Kazekage puppets to use their strongest move. Magnet release, Iron Sand Law. Most of the iron sand protecting Kuroto were pulled away in an instant and turned into sharp spears that rushed at Iwamoto with cannonball speed. Seeing hundreds of spears coming at him, Iwamoto's, who has already gone insane under the effect of chakra overdrive, cackled maniacally as he was driven by madness. The bastard actually gave up the defense and launched Earth Release ninjutsu at Kuroto like a madman. The only thought rushing in his brain was to kill the brat. Even Kuroto didn't know what to feel about this situation. But at this point, he let go of all the thoughts. In the battle of life and death, half-heartedness will only lead to regret. This lesson has been taught to him by his Jonin sensei. After taking a deep breath to let go of unnecessary thoughts, almost at the same time, both sides attacked each other at the same time. Iwamoto's already damaged body that he somehow roughly mended using Earth Release was now again pierced, his entire right shoulder was stabbed, limbs were impaled on the ground by multiple smaller spears. The whole person was ridden with spears from head to toe. The pool of blood dripping along the sphere stained the ground in red. On Kuroto's side, because Iron Sand Law took away more than half of the iron sand from the protective iron sand sphere, there was a large gap in the defense. Although it still safeguarded him from most of the attacks, there was still one rock spear that managed to get through and pierced him through the right leg. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.